Hey, say yes, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here investigating your favorite animes, and today I'm going to be doing an anime review on JoJo's Bizarre Adventures Part 6 Stone Ocean Part 2. Uh, JoJo no Kimyo na Boken Part 6 Stone Ocean has released the second batch of episodes. Basically, episodes 13 to 24 in the Stone Ocean part. So, if you know nothing about JoJo, you're just going to be completely confused watching this review. But essentially, JoJo has several parts. So far, there has been 8 parts of JoJo in the manga, and so far, the anime adaptation has reached part 6. But after part 5, we had an extremely long wait until the release of part 6. And news came that David Production, the production company behind JoJo Anime, has partnered with Netflix to release Stone Ocean. And with the partnering with Netflix, Netflix has decided to release Stone Ocean in 3 batches. So they released episode 1 to 12 all at the same time, all at once, in late December of last year. And then about a month and a half ago, they released episodes 13 to 24 all at once onto the streaming platform, just like that. And then maybe a few months later, they're going to release another batch, and probably going to be the final batch. And so a lot of JoJo fans, including me, myself, are also quite upset with the decision of the batch release, even though I have a habit of binge watching anime. But I have to admit, releasing anime episodes and releasing episodes of any form of medium weekly is the ideal way to release episodes, because it generates hype, it generates discussion, and it genuinely feels freaking amazing to wait for a new episode, and then it drops, and then I go to the discussion platforms and forums on Reddit and I talk about it. It's just so freaking hype. JoJo Fridays were a thing until Netflix ruined it. So yeah, unfortunately, Netflix had ruined the JoJo hype. A lot of people, a lot of anime fans right now don't care about JoJo all that much, and one of the biggest reasons is because of Netflix's really absurd batch release. And it's absurd because they didn't have to do it. When Netflix released Komi-san, it was weekly, but for some reason, for JoJo, it was in batches. And then another really upsetting thing about Stone Ocean Part 2 is that they didn't change the opening sequence. The OP is still Ichigo's Stone Ocean, which is, in my opinion, my least favorite opening out of all of JoJo. Again, go watch my Stone Ocean Part 1 review, but I have several reasons why I didn't like the OP. I think the animation is amazing, but the song itself is just very basic, just very annoying, and sort of like this ha, this American impression, I guess. So easily song-wise, it's not as great. But another reason why I thought there would be a new opening is because I think on episode 12 the opening has sound effects, and it is a JoJo tradition. When the opening sequence have sound effects, it means that it will be the final time the OP plays, and then for the next episode there will be a new OP. But it didn't happen here. We still have the same OP, and that's really weird as well, because the animation of the OP matches with the fights for episodes 1 to 12, with the jump and jack flash and the Manhattan transfer and the Goo Goo Dolls and all that stuff, and it doesn't feature any fights from the second batch. So for some reason we are still using the first OP, we're not getting a second OP, and it is kind of disappointing. And the ED also remains the same, again with Duffy's Distant Dreamer, which I still think is a really good ED. I think it's really emotional, beautiful, and nice. Yeah, that is as far as the complaints go. I do think that the animation of the second batch looks a bit better than the first batch, because there is a less usage of CGI. There are still moments of CGI here and there. there's one particular shot, I think on episode 22 or 21, when we have Whitesnake, but his body is animated, but his head is CGI. That was really weird, but that's just one moment. That's it. So the animation is a little bit better, but overall I still think it is more or less the same quality as the first batch. Now let's go over the second batch. We have episodes 13 to 14, the Limp Biscuit arc. And this arc has been building quite a bit of hype because a lot of people are expecting the localized name for Limp Biscuit to be Flaccid Pancake. Because because that is the localized name on the video game Eyes of Heaven. But both fortunately and unfortunately, Netflix decided to localize this into Limp Biscuit, which doesn't make sense at all. But at least they're getting better and better at localizing names because of Zipperman in Part 5. You know, that's not good. So this time around, they're trying to use, similar sounding, similar pronunciation type of localized names. Limp Biscuit. Later on, we have Ya Ya Ma instead of Yo Yo Ma, and then we also have Made in Heaven instead of Made in Heaven. The Limp Biscuit fight. Honestly, I don't think it's that great. I think it is emotional with Hermes trying to avenge her own sister. I think this plot point is emotional, it's powerful, but at the end of the day, this fight itself isn't memorable because the power is just kind of boring. The ability is just a little boring. Being able to turn animal taxidermies into invisible zombies is not a very fun ability, so it didn't really go anywhere interesting. For some reason, there is like a cemetery inside of the jail, and that sort of created sort of this invisible zombie thing. But the thing is, I've already seen a similar stand before in Part 3 called Justice, I believe. And it's actually even more fun in Part 3 than in here, so not really all that great. And then we have episodes 15 to 19, where we have a series of 4 stand battles back to back to back to back, all taking place at one night. Survivor, Planet Waves, Dragon's Dream, and Yo-Yo Ma. First of all, what I love about JoJo is the ensemble of characters, especially in Part 4, when we have so many characters interacting with each other with very special relationships. But in here, Araki decided to sort of boil it down to only Jolene, Foo Fighters, and Anasui with his Diver Down. And so other characters who previously appeared, like Hermes and Weather Report, they're gone. And guess where are they? In the infirmary. They are sick, or not sick, but they're injured, so they're resting in the infirmary of the jail. And that just feels like a pretty cheap and convenient way of disposing characters. Like, characters, they're not in this arc because they are in the infirmary. They're always in the infirmary. If they don't show up, they have got to be in the infirmary. And I guess it is important to not overuse and abuse these characters too much. And there have been pretty nice solutions to this issue, like in Part 4 in Diamond is Unbreakable. When a character doesn't show up, it makes sense. They're just chilling in their house in Morio, But in here, it's a jail, so every character has to kind of show up. So there's that. I do really like the Survivor and the Planet Waves fight. I think the Survivor fight is really interesting because Dio himself said Survivor is the weakest stand. So I naturally got interested. Like, how will this fight go down? The weakest stand? It is really interesting. And then we have the Planet Waves fight, which is very freaking intense. It involves meteor showers, and it's also a really weird fight. But it's also, again, with Survivor's ability being able to make people angry, this fight is just really sort of agitating and an enraging kind of fight, and it's just really intense, and I really like that. However, the next 2 fights, in my opinion, are a little bit disappointing. And I don't know why, and I say this and I hate to say this, but I think at this point in time, Araki was running out of stand ideas, because the next enemy, the next stand enemy is Dragon's Dream, which is, by the way, localized into Drake's Dream. Oh my god, Drake's Dream. But with the fight with Dragon's Dream, it feels like Araki has ran out of stand ideas, because the stand ability of Dragon's Dream is basically feng shui, and it literally means nothing. It's a luck-based stand, sort of like the Wonder of You in Part 8, which I don't really know much about. But because it's luck-based, anything could happen, so you could literally pull any bullshit anywhere, anytime, and change the story, because it's entirely luck-based. And then we have Yo-Yo Ma, which and the stand ability of Yo-Yo Ma is dissolving people with spit. But it seems like a very simple stand ability, but throughout the entire arc of Yo-Yo Ma, you have no idea what's actually going on, because it's so confusing. It's so weird. There's a green baby. There's Dio's bone. Some guy stole the bone, and that guy died. And that bone became a baby inside a tree root, and that baby became a stand. And suddenly Foo Fighters is melting. And then it's just really random and weird and confusing, and not even in an interesting and engaging way. Throughout the whole arc, I have just been trying to figure out what is Yo-Yo Ma's powers, and when Yo-Yo Ma's powers are revealed, I wasn't really shocked either. It was just like, oh, so the answer the whole time is spit? He uses spit the whole time? So there's that. And again, back to Dragon's Dream, a lot of JoJo fans have believed that this is the worst fight in the entirety of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, or at least the worst stand fight. And unfortunately, I kind of agree with that. This fight is really weirdly paced and extremely confusing. This is easily the most confusing fight, because again, Dragon's Dream is a luck-based stand, and a lot of things happening are really random. But also just the idea of, oh, that's a lucky direction, that's an unlucky direction, and then the characters would just stand at one location and do a speech. Just move your ass. If you're in an unlucky direction, then just go somewhere else. Another side note I want to say about this arc in this part 6 is that I feel like Araki has been going through a bit of a Hong Kong phase at this point, because we have Jolene doing all these badass Bruce Lee poses, and then of course we have Dragon's Dream, which is a stand based on feng shui, and also Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee reference, so that's pretty cool. Another thing I'd like to say is that, wow, this is so gross and violent. A lot of people say part 5 is the most violent part in all of JoJo. They're dead wrong. This is even worse, especially with Diver Down's ability of just completely transforming people's bones, turning Dragon's Dream, Kenzo's legs into like springs, and then turning this other guy's back into a bone trap, and the spine and the bones of the spine just completely break out of the person's back. Like, it's insanely gross. And then there's even with Yo-Yo Ma and the prisoners turning into trees, and like leaves growing and flowers growing, and then a giant tree trunk coming out of a person's mouth. That is straight up Junji Ito's levels of body horror. Part 5 could never. Part 5's not even near this violent. And I feel like that's another minor issue I have with this part, or at least how this part is adapted into anime, is that it is really freaking serious and dramatic. JoJo itself is already really bizarre, and it would be nice to see humor and self-awareness here and there. But there are so many moments where I feel like it's supposed to be funny. I feel like when Araki wrote this, it's supposed to be funny, but the director didn't really get that and still make it really serious, so it's so overly serious with itself. And given how these few episodes all take place at night, it's already really dark. So the anime doesn't really provide a lot of beautiful colors or anything in this few episodes, so it feels a little bit blander and a little bit more forgettable. And yeah, I feel like that's that. However, episodes 22, 23, and 24 are really great in my opinion. Episode 22 is amazing. It doesn't even have a stand fight. It has a fight, but there are no conclusions to this fight. It's almost like the halfway point of part 4 or the halfway point of part 5. There's a huge twist in story, a huge turn. There's a huge death scene. If there's one gripe I have with this episode, with episode 22, is that the death scene felt a bit rushed. So I didn't feel all that emotional when the death scene happened, whereas there are so many death scenes in previous parts, in parts 2, 3, 4, 5, that really stick with me. But this scene in particular just didn't feel as impactful as I would have liked it to be. And then we have episodes 23 to 24, the fight with Jailhouse Lock, or Jailhouse Rock, the Elvis Presley song with Jailhouse Lock, which is actually pretty smart. And essentially what the stand does is Memento. Christopher Nolan's Memento, but a stand. Essentially what this stand does is that it makes, if you touch this stand, you're going to develop anterograde amnesia, and you can only remember 3 things at once. And that's actually incredibly interesting and very engaging. And yeah, it makes sense that Araki is inspired by Memento, because Memento came out in the year 2000, and when he wrote this part, the Memento probably came out around the same time, maybe in Japan, but it is still a really damn good fight. I wish the stand fight is longer, but it is still incredibly interesting in my opinion. So yeah, there's that. I do think that this is definitely one of the few of the weaker episodes I've seen from JoJo. And for some reason, it just, Stone Ocean just doesn't hit me as hard as Diamond is Unbreakable or even Vento Oreo. It just doesn't hit as hard for some reason. Maybe it's because there are fewer memeable moments. There are so many JoJo memes, and a lot of them are in the earlier parts. A lot of JoJo memes are from parts 3, 4, and 5. But for some reason there are a lot fewer memeables in Stone Ocean. Maybe that's also partially because of the lack of hype, because of Netflix's batch release. Maybe a lot of new memes would be generated if Netflix decided to release it weekly. But even when I watch it, there are so many moments that yeah, it's absurd, it's weird, but it's not memeable. And there just aren't a lot of quotables as well. Like, again, Jorono has quotables, Jotaro has quotables, yade yade. And then of course we have Jolene's yade yade dawa, but she didn't say that at all in these 12 episodes. So not really quotable. There aren't enough poses as well. Like, there aren't enough ridiculous, absurd poses that I love. And instead, these few episodes are incredibly confusing, especially again with Dragon Stream and Yo-Yo Ma, but also even in White Snake's fight on episode 22, and then the ending to Jailhouse Lock, when Emporio wrote a whole binary code on a piece of paper, and then Stone Free turned this binary code into a picture, which is really weird. I get it. Stone Free, Jolene has used Stone Free to remind herself of who she's fighting in case she forgets. But that is just such an elaborated and complicated way of remembering something. Emporio could just draw a picture. In fact, Jolene herself can just draw a picture on a piece of paper, on her hand. Or she doesn't even need to draw. She can just use threads to draw. Like, you don't need to use binary codes. And then again, with the death scene is really confusing, because 2 characters were dying, and for a moment I thought the other character is dying, and then turns out it's not that character, it's the other one. That character could have been saved, but wasn't. It was just really confusing. And yeah, even earlier when Foo Fighters was trying to get water and Whitesnake somehow entered a disc into her unnoticed, and then she touched the water and it immediately boiled. Or maybe he used another stand, or maybe there's another stand user somewhere. It's just really confusing for some reason. And then we have Whitesnake's ability to turn himself into something, which is also really confusing. Because at first I thought the whole dreaming ability and illusion ability is Manhattan Transfers. But no, it's Whitesnake. But Whitesnake doesn't use it often. He uses it once and then that's it. At the end of the Jumpin' Jack Flash fight, Whitesnake didn't use that ability at all. And then he used his ability now, and I thought it's supposed to be a dream thing. Like your character just falls asleep. And go into a dream, and it's all an illusion. But apparently he can do this in real life as well. So yeah, kind of confusing, not in a great way. I'll say that it's still very interesting. I still love the art style. I love the changing color palettes. The music is still great. And the voice acting is amazing. Let's just take a moment and appreciate the amazing voice acting from Faidu's Ai, from for everyone else. Issei Maria as Foo Fighters is fantastic. Namikawa Daisuke as Anasui is really great. But yeah. Unfortunately, I'll say that this is probably the weakest few episodes of JoJo I've seen since Part 3. I am giving JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stone Ocean Part 2, the anime, decent 7 out of 10. So yeah, I still enjoy it, but not as much. So have you watched Stone Ocean Part 2? Comments below, let me know. Like if you like it, hate if you hate it, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching.